Talking Trees with Lily and Jad. Welcome to a special recap episode of Talking Trees. Today we're revisiting some topics that highlight the diverse world of trees and plants. We'll explore the mysterious biology and cultural significance of mistletoe, delve into the environmental benefits of using wood chips as mulch, and analyze the life cycles of urban trees alongside their role in shaping city environments. You'll also hear about cutting-edge research on tree stability and wind conditions, the ecological impacts of tree diseases on biodiversity, and the story of the emerald ash borer's invasion and its devastating effects on ash trees across North America and Europe. Join us as we reflect on these varied aspects of arboriculture, blending science, ecology, and cultural insights into one enlightening episode.
All right, so if you happen to be a little behind on Talking Trees from last week, well, that's okay. It happens to all of us sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. Life gets in the way.
But, that's why we're here. We're going to catch you right back up so you don't miss a thing.
That's right. No need to worry.
We've got all sorts of stuff to get into this week.
Yeah, mistletoe, mulch, the future of trees in the cities, even a super in-depth look at how to keep trees from falling over.
Really ran the gamut last week, didn't?
From practical stuff to, these big questions about what our field will look like in the future.
Exactly. So let's rewind all the way back to Monday's episode where they dove into the world of mistletoe.
Oh, yeah. Mistletoe.
And I got to admit, before listening to that episode, I kind of thought of mistletoe as just that holiday decoration, you hang up and then hope somebody stands under it so you can...
Yeah, I get it.
But that episode went way beyond that.
It was fascinating to learn about all the different mistletoe species from around the world.
Oh, right. Different species, yeah.
They talked about the European mistletoe, of course, the Viscum album, I think it's called.
Right.
But they also had some from North America and even Australia that I had never even heard of before.
Really? I hadn't either. That's interesting.
It was cool.
And what about the part about the birds?
Oh, yeah.
Like spreading mistletoe seeds? I thought that was fascinating.
It really is amazing how everything's connected, these ecological relationships.
Totally, it is. And, that interconnectedness of nature. That's something that really came up again and again throughout the week, didn't it?
It did, for sure.
All right, so moving on. On Tuesday's episode, dove headfirst into the mulch debate. Always seems to spark some strong opinions,
People get heated about mulch.
They do, right? It can be a hot topic. But Talking Trees did a good job. They presented two different viewpoints. They had Clay Antio, who was all about mulching, and then they also brought in an article debunking some common mulch myths.
Oh, yeah, the one by Chalker Scott.
Yeah, that's the one.
I thought it was interesting to hear those different perspectives, and what was great was that both sources actually agreed on the benefits of using wood chips for mulch.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's great for soil health, helps retain water, regulates temperature, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I was taking notes like crazy during that episode. So many good takeaways.
Me too.
Especially from that myth-busting article. They really address some misconceptions that I think a lot of us have heard, even, as professionals.
Oh, for sure. Like that thing about mulch attracting termites.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that one.
Turns out that's not even true.
Really? So mulch doesn't attract termites?
Nope. The article explained that termites are way more attracted to moist wood that's in direct contact with the soil.
Huh.
Mulch actually, if you apply it correctly, can actually help prevent termite infestations.
Wow, so it's the opposite of what we thought.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, that was a big aha moment for me too. It's a good reminder that even with something like mulch, which seems so basic, there's always more to learn.
Yeah, and it highlights, how important it is to stay current with research and best practices.
Right, because the field is constantly evolving.
It is, so we need to be committed to learning, throughout our whole careers if we want to provide the best care for our trees.
Absolutely. Okay, so Wednesday, Talking Trees shifted gears to the future of open trees. And
oh, yeah, the urban trees.
That's a topic that's really relevant to our work, isn't it?
Definitely. And they focused on two studies that were both all about predicting how much tree canopy we might lose in cities because of, urban development. One was about Los Angeles, and the other one compared 3 different cities around the Mediterranean.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
It's kind of sobering to think about that. Isn't it like how urbanization could impact our urban forests?
Yeah.
Especially with cities growing like they are.
Mm-hmm.
Both of those studies, though, really emphasize how important it is to plan ahead.
Proactive planning.
And really carefully monitor the trees in our cities.
Yeah. And on a practical level, they said we need to consider what kind of trees we're planting, like how good they are at absorbing CO2 or trapping all those dust particles.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
We got to think about what trees are actually going to thrive in those urban environments.
Right. The right tree for the right place.
Exactly. And then on Thursday, things got really technical with a deep dive into tree stability.
Oh, yeah. Tree stability.
And wind load. That episode was like drinking from a fire hose.
So much information.
So much information. I mean, they covered everything from software to industry standards for tree pulling tests.
Yeah, they had 3 main sources. There was a software program called Adbian, which is for analyzing tree stability, then the SAG standards for tree pulling tests to figure out how well a tree can handle wind. And then they had this source that was all about how buildings affect the wind around trees, which is like
Yeah, I can imagine.
a whole other layer of complexity.
Wow, so much to unpack there. Let's break it down a bit, starting with that Adbian software. They mentioned it has 4 levels of analysis. It goes from like basic visual assessments all the way to these really complex instrumental tests. It sounds like a really powerful tool to help make informed decisions about, when a tree needs to come down.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's all about having data to back up your risk assessment.
Exactly.
Instead of just eyeballing it, you can use Adbian to make more objective decisions. Ones you can defend.
Right. And speaking of objective evaluations, those SAG standards for the tree polling tests, they seem like a really crucial part of this whole thing, too.
Oh, they are. They help you understand how things like the terrain, the other trees around it, even the characteristics of the tree itself, how they all affect the wind load.
I see. So it's not just about how strong the wind is blowing.
Right. It's about all these factors working together to create a potential hazard.
So you got to see the big picture.
Yeah.
Not just one little piece of it.
Exactly. And then that third source, they talked about how buildings can actually change the wind patterns around trees.
Oh, wow. So it's even more complicated than we thought.
Right.
Sounds like there are a lot of variables to consider when you're assessing wind load.
Oh, there are a lot, but I think the main takeaway from that episode was that we have to use data and scientific principles when we're making decisions about tree stability and risk assessment.
So again, it's about making decisions based on data. That seems to be a theme this week.
It is a good theme, though,
That is a good thing.
As arborists, we need to be able to back up our recommendations with evidence and sound reasoning.
I completely agree. Okay, you ready to dig into the last 2 episodes?
Let's do it.
All right, so Friday's episode took a bit of a heavier turn, focusing on tree diseases and their impact on forest ecosystems.
It was a good reminder that our forests are facing some serious threats, both from native and introduced pathogens.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And they explored how diversity in a forest can actually make the trees more resistant to diseases. And then also the role that climate change is playing in all of this and the global plant trade, spreading these diseases around.
It's a complicated web of factors, isn't it?
It is for sure.
It's not just about, identifying and treating one specific disease.
No.
You have to understand the whole ecological context.
Exactly. They emphasize that we need a holistic approach to managing forests.
Right.
Recognizing that diseases are just one piece of this really big, complex puzzle.
I like that analogy. Okay. And speaking of interconnectedness, Saturday's episode brought us face to face with, I guess you could say, a really big threat to our ash trees.
Oh, yeah.
Emerald ash borer.
Emerald ash borer.
This invasive species has been wreaking havoc on ash populations across North America and even over in Europe.
Right.
And Talking Trees took kind of a global perspective on this problem.
Yeah, they started with a research article about the emerald ash borer invasion of Ukraine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the study looked at how fast the pest was spreading, which ash species were most vulnerable, and then also how the borer interacted with this fungus called Hymenosopus fraxineus. Basically, the fungus makes things even worse for the ash trees.
Double whammy.
Yeah, a 1-2 punch.
Wow, it's amazing how fast these invasive species can disrupt, entire ecosystems.
It is. It's alarming for sure.
So they dug into that research article from Ukraine, and then they also provided a broader overview of the emerald ash borer.
Mm-hmm.
So they covered things like its life cycle, how it's distributed, what plants it likes to attack, and the overall devastating impact it's had on ash populations.
Yeah, they really covered all the bases.
Did they offer any hope, though, in terms of possible solutions?
They did. They talked about all sorts of monitoring and control methods that are being used to combat this emerald ash borer, like insecticide treatments, bringing in other insects to prey on them.
Oh, interesting.
And even developing ash trees that are resistant to the borer.
Oh, wow. So it's not all doom and gloom.
No, not at all. It's a serious situation, but people are working hard to manage this pest.
That's encouraging to hear.
It is, and it shows how important it is to work together, to be innovative when we face these global challenges.
That's a great point. So it sounds like last week's episodes of Talking Trees were jam-packed with valuable info and insights.
Oh, yeah. Tons of good stuff.
It's a lot to take in, but I feel like we've got a pretty good handle on the key takeaways now, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. And it's a good reminder that our field is always changing. There's always new research, new technologies, new challenges.
Which is why we got to stay informed and stay engaged.
Exactly. Lifelong learning is essential if you want to be a good arborist.
Couldn't agree more so. Before we jump ahead, let's take a moment to kind of reflect on what we've learned so far. Is there anything that stood out to you from these first 4 episodes?
I think what really struck me was how much they emphasized the interconnectedness of everything.
The interconnected.
Yeah, like how everything in the tree care world is connected in some way.
Yeah. Oh, I see what you mean.
Whether it's like, the mistletoe and the birds, or all the factors that affect how much wind a tree can handle, or even the impact of invasive species. You can't just look at trees in isolation.
That's a great point.
They're part of these big, complex ecosystems, and everything we do has an impact on that system.
And something else that really stood out to me was how much Talking Trees focused on using data and science in our work.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's not just about climbing trees and pruning branches anymore.
No way.
We have to understand these complex biological processes and use all these data-driven tools and, stay up to date on the latest research.
Right.
And that episode on wind load and tree stability was a perfect example.
Oh, yeah, that one was packed with info.
I mean, they went deep into that software Adbian for risk assessment and talked about the standards for tree pulling tests and even how buildings can affect wind flow around trees.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in.
It really shows that our decisions need to be based on solid science.
Absolutely. And it's not just about understanding the science ourselves. We have to be able to explain it to our clients and the public.
That's so true.
Remember that article about mulch myths?
Oh, yeah, that was a good one.
That's a great example of using science to clear up misconceptions and, promote best practices.
And it reminded me that even experienced arborists can sometimes have outdated information.
It happens to the best of us.
Yeah, so it's up to us to stay informed and share that knowledge with others.
All right, we have to be the experts.
I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
From mistletoe to invasive species to the future of trees in our cities.
Yeah, a whirlwind tour.
But I think one message came through loud and clear.
What's that?
We need a holistic approach to tree care.
Holistic and interconnected.
Exactly. It's not just about one tree. It's about understanding the whole system.
All the relationships that support that tree.
Right. And working within that system to keep things healthy and resilient.
For the long haul.
So to all our fellow arborists out there, keep those chainsaws sharp.
And your minds even sharper.
Exactly. And most importantly, keep that love for trees alive.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, that's a wrap on our deep dive into last week's Talking Trees episodes. We hope you found it informative and insightful, and maybe even a little bit inspiring.
We did our best.
Until next time, happy tree climbing.
Happy climbing, everyone.
Thank you for tuning in to this recap episode of Talking Trees. We hope you enjoyed revisiting these varied and impactful topics, from mistletoe's cultural roots to the ecological challenges posed by invasive species and urban forestry solutions. These discussions underline the interconnectedness of trees, ecosystems, and human lives. If you want to support the podcast and access exclusive content, consider joining us on herohero.talkingtrees. Your support helps us bring even more insightful episodes your way. Stay curious, keep exploring the world of trees, and we'll see you in the next episode of Talking Trees.